Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to talk about a phenomenon, a type of narcissist that not everyone is as familiar with. It's known as the vulnerable narcissist. So what is a vulnerable narcissist? So first I'm going to go over there's 11, give or take, we'll just go with 11 common signs of a vulnerable narcissist. So they have low self-esteem. Their introversion masks their insecurities. They're prone to intense emotions. They're controlling in relationships. They lack long-term relationships. They're passive aggressive. They avoid certain social situations, and they blame others for their problems. So back to number one, low self-esteem. A lot of times people get very confused about narcissism and self-esteem. And they think, oh, narcissists are so full of themselves. They love themselves so much. And that's actually not true. There's a big difference between self-esteem and inflated sense of self. So self-esteem, people who truly have self-esteem are not narcissists because it just means you have compassion for yourself, you have kindness towards yourself, you feel generally okay as yourself. Not perfect, maybe. You have your good days, your bad days, but you're not coming from this empty place. Inflated sense of self. Think about what that means. It's a big balloon. It's a big balloon full of air. Pop it, gone. So inflated sense of self is something that's created as a defense mechanism to protect or hide the lack of self-esteem, the fact that you actually don't feel good about yourself, but that's way too scary for a narcissist to even go there or think about. So instead, they have this sense of self-importance. Now, with a vulnerable narcissist, that's going to be a little more hidden. It's not going to be so obvious, and that's why it's easier to see them as a victim. They're also known as the victim narcissist. They come off very almost whiny and poor me, as opposed to the more grandiose, like, oh, I'm the best and look at me. So it presents differently, but it just means that every narcissist has self-esteem, but they cover it up in different ways. So the introversion masks their insecurities. So narcissists will tend towards introversion, but it's not so much that they're necessarily introverts. It's that they're afraid of any situation that's going to expose them, make them feel bad, make them feel less than. So they have an idea that, again, I have to be good at something. I'm only okay if I'm good at this. So if I expose myself to a situation where I'm not going to be good at something, or maybe I'm out of my element, I'm just not going to go. They don't want to ever look weak. So the idea is that they'll hide behind a mask of introversion, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're actual introverts. And the only difference between introvert and extrovert is an introvert needs downtime from people to get their energy back, so they kind of recharge their batteries away from people, whereas extroverts get their energy from people. So it means that they could be around people a lot longer. In fact, they actually will suffer if they have to be away from people. They almost start to run out of steam, and they need that as kind of an energy source, whereas introverts need to be away from that to kind of get their energy source from inside. So it's intro or outro. So that's a way we're wired. That has nothing to do with narcissism. So narcissism is more that it's coming from an insecure place, that they will withdraw and be introverted. However, they can certainly be extroverts if they're feeling comfortable or they're in their element. And they will do something even known as holding court. They could go on and on about some topic and bore everybody because they feel confident. Oh, I know everything about this. Look at me, because it makes them feel good and it inflates them, inflates their ego. So prone to intense emotions. So this is the other thing where people get confused, because narcissists, they can cry, they can get very upset, they can feel sorry for themselves, and it comes off as they're hurting, they're sad, they're vulnerable. That's where that vulnerability comes into place. However, it's only ever about them. They're not having intense emotions out of empathy. It's not like, oh, I feel so bad that I hurt you and I'm feeling sad. It's like, I feel bad that I feel bad. So, and they can also get extremely angry. A vulnerable narcissist can be full of rage, and that's what's so scary about it, is that you're going along your merry way and maybe they're feeling really sad, and all of a sudden they get super mad and they start raging, and it can be like 0 to 60 like that. So it can be really strange and scary, and really set you off balance to see that shift. So remember, their emotions can swing. They can have a lot of mood swings. They're controlling in relationships, absolutely, but their controlling is usually more covert, although it can come out in more overt ways if they're feeling threatened. But generally, it's in smaller ways, quieter ways, which is why sometimes we don't see it right away. They might say something to you like, "Are you sure you want to wear that?" Or "I don't know, that doesn't really suit you. Aren't you a little old to be wearing that?" So they can kind of make you feel uncomfortable, or I don't know if I should tell you this, but so and so said this about you, and I thought you should know. But they're not saying it because they think you should know. They're saying it to keep. They always want to keep the upper hand. So generally, they're the backstabbers. They're the ones that will. You can't really trust as far as you can throw them. They're definitely not a what you see is what you get type person, even though sometimes they will present as that way. They're being so raw, they're being so vulnerable. Again, it's always self-serving. They lack long-term relationships. So again, not always true. Sometimes a vulnerable narcissist can get in a long-term relationship as long as they're getting what they need, or they're getting their supply, or they might be so afraid of rejection or so afraid of looking bad by leaving. So generally, that would be a narcissist who maybe has underlying other types of narcissism, because there's not always one type. Like a lot of times narcissists can be several types. So if they're a vulnerable narcissist but they have some other aspects, then that may not be true. However, there are a lot of narcissists who don't get into long, or maybe very late in life they might, and they can almost come off as commit phobes, because again, they'll bail if they're uncomfortable. They'll bail if they're looking bad. They'll bail if they're not good at something, or they feel insecure and they'll blame that other person, or they might push them away, or that person might leave them because they're fed up. So again, that is generally a trait, is the lack of long-term relationships. They're passive aggressive, kind of what I mentioned earlier. They control, they manipulate by being very passive aggressive, underhanded. They can make comments about things, again, keep you off balance, very manipulating. And they can, be like, make you feel guilty. They're great at guilt. So in other words, sure, go with your friends. Sure, I have nothing to do. I'll just sit home, and maybe I'll just, think about all what's wrong with my life and realize what a loser I am. I mean, they might even say that. They might threaten things. They might threaten something that starts with an S, to harm. They've some kind of self-harm. And again, we should always take that seriously. However, with the vulnerable narcissist, it is generally a manipulation tactic, and something that they'll use, again, a way of being passive aggressive. They might threaten something. However, they're doing it to control you. So definitely lots of passive aggressiveness. They avoid certain social situations, which I did mention earlier, that again, if it's somewhere they're out of their element, they feel like they can't be the best. Maybe they think is smarter than them, everyone's better looking than them, everyone is more accomplished. They'll find a way to get out of it. They don't want to go. So that's where that pretend kind of introversion comes. Or they might make up an excuse. Oh, I'm sick, or my back hurts, or I don't feel well. A lot of times it can be really frustrating, because you might have plans to do something and they'll cancel at the last second. because they suddenly get very threatened or very afraid. Or even if you're too excited about going, or maybe they feel like you're going to steal the show or you're going to steal their thunder, or it could be something you're good at or something that matters to you. Maybe it's a work function, maybe it's somewhere you know everyone, maybe it's something to do with your school, your something that you excel at. They'll find a way to bail, or if they do go, they'll be miserable, withdraw, and just make you feel horrible. And they'll want to leave early and all that type of thing. So again, it's that passive aggressive mixed in with the avoiding the social situations because they don't want to feel bad, basically. So it's very avoidant. They blame others for their problems. So my mom never loved me. That's why I'm the way I am. My father did this one, my boss. I've never had a good boss. And again, yeah, childhood trauma, all that stuff is what created it. But instead of looking at that as kind of a jumping off point where we do trauma work and we're like, yeah, this is what happened with my family. This is the patterns of dynamic. It was really terrible. Here's where I want to heal. Here's where I want to look at it and learn and, get therapy, get the support. So again, it's not that they didn't necessarily have that terrible experience. It's the fact they use it as an excuse to become a victim and never change and also abuse others and also externalize everything. It's not my fault I keep getting fired from my job. I just have these terrible bosses. I don't know why everyone dumps me. Every woman I've ever met dumps me. Every man leaves me. I don't know why. They're just a bunch of jerks. They're a bunch of commitment phobes. There's that common denominator, right? Them, really them. So again, it's always blaming. Everyone's out. Everything's external. Everything's outward. So those are the basic traits of a vulnerable narcissist. If anybody would like to share an experience about it, or if you'd like to know more or want me to jump in deeper, that would be great. But that kind of covers, I think, what I need to today. And again, I love your comments. Please like and subscribe. And thanks so much for watching. I so appreciate you. And I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.